Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our webinar, Appraising in the Time of a Pandemic. This has been quite a week. My name is Sally Carruthers. I'm the CEO, President of True Union Appraisal Services. And we're offering this webinar. We offered it on Monday and again today, this afternoon. And some of you might have been on Monday, and I said I would give you some updates as of this afternoon to tell you what's going on. And of course, there have been quite a lot of changes from 10 o'clock on Monday morning to 3 o'clock our time Wednesday afternoon. So the numbers are quite staggering, and it's quite interesting to see how various agencies can move and move very quickly if they need to. And so we'll discuss some of those changes and updates, and if those that were on Monday want to get off at that point, that's fine. I will get into the new Fannie Mae mortgage letter and what is permitted on that fairly early on in the webinar. So if you want to stay and listen to that, that is fine, because I know there is a lot of confusion around that. And so we would need to talk about that. A couple of housekeeping items. As usual, in our webinars, you are all on mute. And you should hear me loud and clear. I will say, like everyone else, I am practicing social distancing and working out of my home office. And here in Central Ohio, it is a beautiful day. And but there may be some noises that you hear that are not typical. So bear with me on that. The other thing is, as you enter and leave, sometimes the actual audio kind of goes in and out. So try to put your own phones on mute too, so that we don't hear you, so that it doesn't ruin it for anybody else. So thank you very much for joining. We very much appreciate it. So first slide, updates. Where are we at right now? This is probably as of about, I think I updated this about an hour ago. So currently there are 445,982 confirmed coronavirus COVID-19 cases worldwide. That is a rather interesting kind of number too. There are actually 60,162 here in the United States. The numbers that I had for our webinar on Monday were 349,807 worldwide, and only 35,418 in the United States. So it is here in the United States nearly doubling in 3 days. That is pretty scary. And we don't have all the testing out there. Just want to point out one of the things, the statistics I found out was that this virus began in Wuhan, China, as everybody knows, in December. It took weeks for that case to get to the first 100,000. The next 100,000, it took 12 days, and then 3 days to go from 200 to 300,000. And of course, now we can see how quickly it is growing from there. As you're probably aware, New York State has emerged as the epicenter of the crisis. I know we have some folks from New York State on the phone. As of writing this, there were nearly 27,000 infections in New York State, and of course, the majority of those are actually in the city of New York. So that is a lot of need for resources. There are a growing number of states and local authorities that are calling for a stay-at-home order. I'm here in Ohio. We are under a stay-at-home order. And so there is permitted movement to and from work for designated essential workers. And unfortunately, I'm not quite sure which one you're in, but appraisers are typically permitted as essential workers, either under financial institutions or real estate. One of those two functions, or both functions, the states have said need to continue. And so appraisal work keeps on. And as I listen to various things, it is very important that we keep our credit markets open. And in order for people to get credit in the real estate field, there has to be an appraisal of the collateral somehow. And so your jobs are very, very necessary. And I'm sure you're busy with that. So also, the Federal Reserve has unveiled, they did this on Monday. Well, actually, they started last week by dropping the rate to zero, but also unveiled a massive expansion of lending programs designated really to unclog those credit markets and allow capital to reach businesses. And so you've seen the stock market crash and then rebound, fall down again. It seems to go back and forth. I think it's up today. It was up yesterday. To assist keeping the credit markets moving and to allow appraisers to stay safe but still give value opinions, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have issued temporary restrictions that allow either exterior or desktop appraisals under circumstances where it's not possible to do an interior inspection. Not in all cases, but in some circumstances, and we will talk about that and the decision that really is with the lender ultimately. It is their risk, and obviously you make the decision if you want to go in someone's house or not, but the decision on what type of appraisal, it depends on the lender. With that, the Appraisal Foundation issued last night a question and answer that really addresses the use of a different scope of work, limiting conditions, certifications in a preset form, and so really allowing you to cut and paste the language that Fannie and Freddie have provided. And right now, as of right now, I haven't heard there is any official vote, but the Senate and White House have apparently reached a $2 trillion stimulus deal. $2 trillion. I was trying to figure out, I think that's 12 zeros. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that is a massive stimulus package to try and get our economy going, people back to work, if necessary, or at least unemployment benefits, help for small businesses and large businesses, and really be able to kind of prop us up during this very, very difficult time. So that's my main updates that I have. As I said, I will go over those Fannie and Freddie temporary orders and go through that in a minute. So if you kind of stay on, I will address that. So I just want to talk about why we're in this circumstance right now. I don't think that any of you on this call don't know why we're not under this. But just to kind of put the whole kind of scope of it out there, because it is really incredible, and nobody would have thought this. And I don't think anyone would have really looked at what a pandemic was. It is actually, it's an epidemic that occurs on a scale that crosses international boundaries. And it usually affects a large number of people. Well, that first slide really indicated it does. I think it is in, I don't know how many countries. And I think still Italy is probably the epicenter, although I think New York's coming fast behind. And I understand, unfortunately, the more people have passed away in Spain than they have in China. So Europe has it very bad at the moment. And a disease or condition is not a pandemic merely because it's widespread or kills many people. It has to be infectious. So cancer kills a lot of people, but it doesn't amount to a pandemic because it's not infectious. There are currently two pandemics, the HIV/AIDS pandemic that still continues, and what we have now, which is the coronavirus disease of 2019, started last year, COVID-19. So what is it? And I hope I hope everybody is well on this call and nobody has been in contact with this yet. But it really, coronavirus is an ongoing global pandemic and it's caused by severe acute respiratory syndrome. The virus is very, very easily spread from one person to another via respiratory droplets produced through coughing. And it can be spread by touching contaminated surfaces and then touches one's face. So that is why they think it was so bad in New York, because it literally spread through the subway system. As people were going through the subway and touching areas that were already contaminated. And we're going to discuss that, especially when we get to you actually doing your appraisals, because that becomes very important. It is incredibly hard for us not to touch our face. So it is far better to avoid touching something than and washing our hands to ensure that we are not actually getting this virus. So the main ways of prevention, very important that, and I know that you've been watching the TV and you understand this, hand washing. And hand washing for at least 20 seconds. I always count. And that you use soap and water, very important, use that soap. And if not, that you have hand sanitizer that has at least 60% alcohol. So when you're out doing your inspections, ensure you've got the hand sanitizer, because you probably don't always have access to soap and water when you're going anywhere. Respiratory hygiene, that means covering your mouth and nose when you cough. Using a surgical mask if necessary. Very important is social distancing, quarantine, travel restrictions, business and school closings, and even to the point that when you're out and about, I went to the post office yesterday and they had social distancing, everybody waiting to get into see the lady at the post office had to stand apart, which means that the line is somewhere out the door at that point. But self-isolation is recommended for those who are diagnosed, and that self-quarantine, that you are away from anybody if you are in fact infected. And these are things that you already hear. So you are probably being asked to do inspections, and many of you are still doing inspections, and we, are not saying that is completely your choice. I will say, if you are a high-risk group, you're an older appraiser, and some of us aren't spring chickens, including myself. But if you have heart disease, diabetes, lung disease, cancer, HIV, asthma, or if you're pregnant, you probably should stop performing inspections. It means that if you get the virus, it is far harder to deal with. You will be sicker. There are people who aren't very sick with this, people who are moderately sick, and some who require hospitalization. And we would not want to. I don't want to see any of our appraisers in that position. The other ones that should stay home are those of you who are symptomatic. You have a nasty cough and a fever. The other one I heard, if you can't smell or taste, I guess that is a thing. It's extremely hard right now still to get tested. So if you are symptomatic, please stay home and don't go out or and mix with other people. Also, you should be obeying your stay-at-home orders if you're not classified. If you're in an area that you're not classified as an essential worker, I don't actually know of anywhere that is right now. I think most of the time you are. And I think every state that we work in, we're getting appraisals done. So it seems that appraisers are still out there as essential workers, and we will talk about that. Make sure that you ask detailed questions before you enter a property, or even before you even have the appointment. Is anyone sick? Has anyone traveled? Is anyone symptomatic? Just before I got onto this webinar, I got an email from a local OCAP group, and an appraiser had made a call to the borrower and asked some questions, and the borrower said, yes, a couple of people are sick in our home, and someone's just traveled back from Europe, and the appraiser's like, well, I don't think I'll be coming out right now, and called the AMC, and the AMC said, we'll reassign it. Makes you feel really good, right? So this appraiser was sharing the property address. Don't go. Practice social distancing. So, tell them we're not going to shake hands. I'm not going to touch surfaces. I know appraisers who ask the borrower or the realtor to make sure all the doors are open, all the lights are on. I think it's a very good idea to wear gloves and potentially a mask when you're in a property. And really consider your own health and safety, but that of your family. The homeowners are the real estate professionals. So a lot of things you can do to make sure that your experience and the others is safe and healthy. So right now I want to talk about this lender letter that came out of Fannie Mae and the corresponding one that came out of Freddie Mac too. It was lender letter LL 220-04, impact of COVID-19 on appraisals. And basically what this letter does is allow for some flexibility for lenders on appraisal inspections and reporting requirements. It allows lenders to obtain, under certain circumstances, either a desktop appraisal or an exterior-only inspectional appraisal in lieu of that interior, what they call traditional appraisal. So under certain circumstances, they may be able to get a desktop or an exterior. The exterior is usually the first one they're going to try and get. Because it can be used, I'll explain, but it can be used for a purchase transaction or limited use refinance. So they will probably see if you can do an exterior inspection. If that is not possible, they will maybe go to the desktop. I will say we are not doing a lot of desktops. We are doing a lot of the exterior inspections where borrowers sometimes aren't comfortable with the appraiser coming in or for other circumstances. But there still are some desktops being done. So the desktop appraisal can be used for a purchase money transaction, not a refinance transaction. And it is used only when an interior or exterior appraisal are not available. So it is the default when the others aren't ready. Appraisers can rely on public records, MLS information, other third-party sources to identify the property characteristics. It may be that you obtain photographs of the interior from the borrower, as long as those are reported and verified within the appraisal report. Now, here's the important thing, and this is where some of the confusion comes in on this letter. The desktop appraisal may be reported on the 1004, 1073, 2090, 1025, 1004C. So the 1004, of course, is your traditional appraisal, right? The URAR where you do an interior inspection on a single-family property. The 1073 is your condo form, typically for an interior inspection. 2090 is for cooperative. 1025 is 2 to 4 family, and the 1004C for a manufactured home. So all those are traditional kind of appraisal reports. So now, with the language that they are giving us, you may do a desktop appraisal and report them on that form. Now, if the lender picks an exterior-only one, which may be done for either purchase money or limited cash-out refinances, on a one-family report, a single-family home, it's got to be reported on a 2055. On a condominium, it has to be reported on the 1075 and a cooperative on the exterior 2095. The other exterior reports for a 2 to 4 family, manufactured home, may be reported on those traditional forms. But here's the thing. Fannie Mae already had UAD-specific exterior forms for the single-family, condo, and the co-op, and those are the ones that are to be used. Every single report that is done for a lender that is selling to Fannie, whether it is now a desktop or an exterior, will go through the UAD and get the traditional SSR score through the collateral underwriter. And if that collateral score is below 2.5, as is typical, as is normal, they will get day one certainty. So they're going to go through the collateral underwriter, and that's the reason that they're allowing these forms to be used for the desktop, so that we can keep on using those traditional forms. So let me kind of repeat all that, because it is a little kind of confusing. If you are asked to do an exterior, say the borrower won't let you into a property, you call us and say, hey, we can't get into the property, the borrower won't let us. We'll report that to the credit union. Credit union comes back to us and says, okay, I want an exterior only report. You will report that on a 2055 if it's a single family. You would report it actually on a 1075 if it was a condominium. If it happened to be a manufactured home, you're going to actually do it on the 1004C. Now, if for some reason there's a stay-at-home notification, you can't actually go and inspect the exterior of the property for some reason, then the lender comes back and says, I want a desktop appraisal. If it's a single family property, it will go on the 1004. So that's kind of that's a kind of difference. It's a little confusing. I know we've had some confusion everywhere with that, and we've had some people doing some hybrid kind of things, but it's pretty clear cut. The desktop appraisal does not require any form of interior inspection or any form of exterior inspection, none at all. It is done without an experience. Now, you can get information from the homeowner or a third party, an agent. You may get photographs or what other information, but no inspection, either interior or exterior, is required for the desktop. For an exterior, only an exterior inspection is required. So, and that is usually the first course that they're going to go to. Now, there are exhibits with a 2055 photographs, location map, things that, and any adequate support for your market value. So you're not going to do this totally without any addendum or anything. You're going to go through it all. So the key thing that Fannie and Freddie have done is to provide you with revisions to the scope of work, statement of assumptions, and limiting conditions and appraisal certifications. So when you go on to, and you can get through to, you can pull up this letter on the appraiser page of Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. You will see a link to the modified set of instructions, scope of work, statement of assumptions, limiting conditions, and certification for both the desktop and then for the exterior only. Those instructions are in a Word doc format, so it's really, really simple to just cut and paste them into your appraisal report. I will get to what the Appraisal Foundation has addressed this and is permitted in this under USPAP, so we'll get to that. The other one thing that you have to do when asked to do this is to put in the map reference section of the form on the first page at the top, a corresponding text identifier. And this is probably going to kind of link through the UCDP. And you're going to put whether it's a desktop or exterior. So you just kind of type that in. So why is that important? Well, say you're doing a manufactured home and you're doing an exterior. you just put exterior in that map reference area. Now, it's pretty self-explanatory. If you're doing a 2055, we know it's an exterior, but you still got to put it in there. So you're doing a 1004, but it's actually a desktop appraisal. I'm sure I've totally complicated you guys, but you're doing a 1004, it's a desktop. You need to just type in desktop into that map reference area. So hopefully everybody understands it. Go to the letter on the reference page. Read it carefully. And if you have any questions, please let me know, and we can address those. It is, but the one thing I want to kind of emphasize here is this isn't your choice. So you can't get to the property and go, oh, the borrower won't let me in, I'm just going to do an exterior. You work for the client who is our credit union, and the credit union has to give you your assignment and engage you in whatever assignment they choose. And they will have all the information on what they need in order for them to sell that loan to Fannie and Freddie. So it is their choice. So that is really important. Okay, so many of us are sheltering in place right now, staying at home, and we have been told to, I think, a quarter of the country, maybe more than that, is under a stay-at-home, shelter-in-place order at this time. We are here in Ohio, and some of our neighboring states are too. There are typically exceptions for what they call essential workers. And one of the big questions, I think probably the biggest questions I've had from credit unions and appraisers in the last 2 to 3 days is, are we essential or not? And often I refer the appraiser to their state regulator. And what has really come out is, some of them are very specific. Illinois and Ohio really actually names appraisers as part of financial institutions. Some have named appraisers under real estate. So it has often been clarified, and I think there is probably enough evidence right now to think that it is. But if you do have a question, you probably should go to your state regulator for an answer on it. And then I just put this out here because I just wonder if you can do an exterior inspection if you're under a shelter in place and you're not an essential worker. I don't know whether your car becomes part of your home, but perhaps I'm just being a little difficult at that point. But of course, hopefully Fannie and Freddie have solved that problem, allowing the desktop appraisal. Let me go back to that. There's something I want to say. It is not permitted in all cases. There are times when the lender will still need an interior inspection. And we're seeing this often. And I just want to say, you might be, kind of wringing a hand saying, why don't they do an exterior or a desktop? But their hands are tied. So particularly on a cash out refinance, there's only limited times when on a cash out refinance that they can actually still use that desktop appraisal. So often there are cases. The other time is that they if you're doing a home style, either a renovation or an energy efficient one, FHA still requires interior inspections, and a lot of our credit union clients, as you probably know, keep the paper themselves, and out of an abundance of caution, they may still require an interior inspection. It really has to do with risk. So don't automatically think because you can't get into a property or you don't feel comfortable that it will be converted to either a desktop or drive-by. It may not be. So the same rules go. 1004D, that hasn't changed at all. So you just proceed with that as normal. So what about the Appraisal Foundation? They have been pretty active. on this, and they now have a specific site that you can go to. One of the things they basically have kind of said and said again is that USPAP does not require an interior inspection. So I think that's a really, really major thing to understand. They also talk about, extraordinary assumptions. We're going to talk about an extraordinary assumption. It's incredibly important. If either you're doing an exterior inspection or you're doing a desktop appraisal. Sorry. So we're going to talk a little about that. Last night they came out with a new Q&A, which really basically states regarding the modification of the standard form. It used to be that you couldn't adjust or change anything on the standard form, the scope of work, but basically they're saying that this is, this supersedes this under the temporary requirements that came out of Fannie Mae. So you can address that. I think I sent it out to all our appraisers this morning, so you should actually have a copy of that too. So, and also you can go onto the Appraisal Foundation's website, and they do have various questions in there that they have answered to the best of their ability. So they are there to help guide us, and as should be your state regulators too. There are some things that I haven't really covered in this webinar concerning your continuing education cycles, whether those will be extended. Those of you who are trainees, the examinations and those type of things. So you can go onto the foundation or your state regulator to find out about those. Those are kind of important to a lot of people as they continue to do work. So let's talk about, the case for doing exterior inspections, and why they're good, why they're bad. For your safety, do not get out of the car. I'm just going to say that it's, what the whole point of kind of moving to this exterior inspection is to protect your health and safety. So it's no use if you're going to go in and you're going to start poking around outside and, you don't really know, where you're going to be. Fees, what can you expect, on this? I don't know how other AMCs are doing this, and I don't really want to comment on what they're doing or other lenders. We kind of did a very kind of simple, 25 less for an exterior and 50 for a desktop. That way we feel that our appraisers are still getting paid very reasonable fees, and but the consumer isn't getting hammered on this. And I think that's really where we have to be on this. And our management fee doesn't change. There is no difference for us whether we do whether it's an exterior or it's or an interior. So anyway, credibility of value. Well, I guess Fannie and Freddie I think is okay, and I think in a lot of cases it is fine to do an exterior inspection. Actually, I always said that. I live in Columbus, Ohio, very homogeneous housing stock, and I could probably kind of appraise 80%, maybe. I think I change that percentage now and then of the houses without, actually going in. So, and then you have your extraordinary assumption. We'll talk about that. I was hopeful that, of course, this is a big pipe dream of mine. I was hopeful that Fannie Mae will be able to share some data. It doesn't seem like that's going to happen. I don't know if it's ever going to happen. I would like them to share data with you guys as the appraisers. Those of you who are lenders on the phone, you get data through Collateral Underwriter. We get some as an AMC, as in the score, but this would have been a good time to provide appraisers with data. In other words, if a property had been appraised before, there would be data on condition and square foot and that kind of thing. But it doesn't look like that is going to happen. I think there's nothing wrong with getting input from borrowers. And I talk about, actually, I think it's in the next slide, virtual tours. You could have a borrower or a realtor just kind of do a virtual tour of the property with their cell phone. And I think as much information as you can get is good. People say, well, what if they miss the crack in the basement? And I say, well, chances are when you go in to inspect the property, they've got some big heavy piece of furniture up against that. You wouldn't see it anyway. So people hide things from you when you go in, even when you're inside. And I don't know about the shelter in place. I would always advise that you have some kind of documentation in your car. I would say that you have your appraisal license, and I would say that you have an engagement letter that shows that you have been requested to do this by the credit union, so that you are covering yourself. So this was written on Sunday, I think. Is it time for desktops? I didn't change this because I kind of think that this has really come full circle, and obviously it is time for desktops. It's just that it's interesting in the way that the powers that be are doing this. So the short answer is yes, under certain circumstances. We are not finding that the credit unions are terribly comfortable with them yet. So we haven't done a whole bunch, but that might change in certain circumstances. Obviously, again, repeat that USPAP does not require an inspection, and you have to utilize you will be utilizing extraordinary assumptions, and I think it's very important that you define what that is and explain that in your appraisal report. And again, I talk about that data that might come from the borrower or another third party, perhaps with a virtual inspection. So we're going to see how this one goes. So yes, it is time for the desktops. They are here. Even if, and I think the one thing I will say about this is they landed on our desk right now here and then, and I think you're going to find that you'll be well compensated for them. So I think that was a big worry for a lot of appraisers in the past, how much they would get paid for them. But I think you're going to find that you will be well compensated, and it won't be simply a case of having a fee and then taking away the inspection. Looking at what you got paid on. If you get $350 for an appraisal and you get $150 for a 1004D, no one's going to take $150 away and only pay you $200 for the desktop. That I don't think would happen, and if it is happening, you shouldn't do the appraisal, in my opinion, anyhow. So I think we obviously live in interesting times and things are changing. So let's look at that extraordinary assumption, because this is really important. And I think even as much as we take USPAP and we listen and read, we get kind of confused on this extraordinary assumption. We get confused on the hypothetical condition, but I'm not talking about that here. I'm talking about the extraordinary assumption. It's an assumption directly related to a specific assignment as of an effective date of the appraisal results, which, if found to be false, could alter the appraisal's opinions or conclusions. So essentially, what an appraiser says is, hey, I was asked to do a desktop appraisal. I did not inspect the inside of the property. I was provided with all this data. The borrower did a virtual tour or whatever it was that you were provided with. However, if that information was not correct, in other words, they videoed the wrong property or whatever, all bets are off. You can't hold me to my value. My value is based on this information, which I believe to be true, and I've based my assignment results on that. I've done my analysis based on that, and if that was found not to be true, then that might alter my assignment results. You use the county's gross living area that they have, but whatever. They didn't, count the two-story. They didn't, subtract the two-story areas, and so they just doubled it all up. So the house is actually, 1,000 square feet smaller than you think it is. And Oh, could that impact value? Maybe. But you're only as good as the information that you provided. That's why I would have liked to have seen some information coming out of, Fannie and Freddie. But the extraordinary assumption is your friend. USPAP is actually your friend. So you really need to use the information that the Appraisal Foundation is providing to you and cite it in your appraisal report. It is extremely important. This extraordinary assumption is very, very, very important at this time to your appraisal reports, especially when you're doing exteriors or desktop analysis. So let's move on to some other things out of that. I want to talk a little about virtual offices. The fact of the matter is a lot of my appraisers out there that are with us right now probably have been working in a virtual office. They have done this for a while, but some of them work for people and they're used to going into an office, and some of our credit union friends that are on the call all of a sudden have found themselves at home, and they've got the kids there and they've got their husband there, and it gets very noisy and they get distracted, and there's all kinds of things going on. So I just wanted to give a few pointers. I have worked from home quite a lot. I work in an office and at home, and of course I'm an appraiser. So, I had done that, when I had my own business. So the first thing I think is incredibly important is to keep to a schedule. So this week, my husband started working from home. He'd never done that before. And he just couldn't believe that I would get up at the same time, take a shower, do exactly the same things as if I was going to the office. The only thing I don't do is perhaps dress up, maybe. Although I don't tend to wear sweats or pajamas or whatever. But I have lunch at the same time. I have my afternoon tea at the same time. I do certain things at a certain time each day. And I think it's the way that I have always been able to work if for those times I do work from home. So try and keep scheduled and try and keep organized. That really helps to have a place to put things. I am a person who does not like paper, so I like things to be on the computer, and I'm very organized in that way. So I utilize the technology. You have it there. Don't have, so utilize that. Use the technology you have, whether it's on your phone, an iPad, or you have, on your computer. You will need that technology as you start to do kind of desktops, and you've got virtual tours and things like that. I would make sure that one of the things at the bottom I have there, stay connected. You can use that technology to connect to your peers. There are lots of ways of having, conference calls and meetings virtually, and I think that really, really helps from stopping the isolation that can happen. Be mobile. So there's nothing more annoying than I don't say it's annoying. People who aren't, kind of mobile, or don't have technology that's mobile. So you should be able to answer emails and texts and look up things, in a situation that isn't actually in your office. It really helps right now. And stay current. That's why we do these webinars. Right now, things are happening so quickly. There is so much going on. It is really, really important to know exactly what is going on and understand that. Case for and against appraisal waivers. These are happening, and they're probably going to happen. Well, I think they want them to happen more. But here's the thing. That decision on an appraisal waiver is risk-based. And I can't help but think that an appraisal waiver is risky in times of economic uncertainty. And we are certainly in a time of economic uncertainty. So I am not so sure. So right now, I have a case against appraisal waivers. I do think that appraisers shouldn't be worried about this. You can't have appraisal waivers without data that is provided by appraisers. So if a lender gets an appraisal waiver, it's based on a prior appraisal. There has to have been a prior appraisal in order for a property to get an appraisal waiver. And just remember this, that real estate loans are predicated on collateral value and risk. There always has to be a valuation of the collateral. And so at some point, you're not going to lose out. So don't worry about these. They are happening. They might happen a little more. But I still think that most of our clients are going to be a little nervous of these. And basically because of this is a time of economic uncertainty, and we really don't know what is happening. Having said that, too, I think it is probably a good idea, and I'm seeing this more and more, to put a COVID-19 disclaimer into your appraisal report. I read a very, very interesting article by a gentleman called Brad Bowen, and he put it it's in Appraisal Buzz. There's a link on here. And it basically says, as of the effective date, the short and long-term impact on the market from COVID virus is unknown. However, it is reasonable to assume that current restrictions in market activity due to the virus will extend marketing times at least 60 days beyond the current levels. This assumption has been taken into consideration with regards to the estimate of reasonable exposure time. At this time, the appraiser assumes that there is a delay in market activity, but not a significant long-term shift in demand or supply, which will result in a change in market prices. These are considered to be extraordinary assumptions, which, if proven false, would impact the opinions and conclusions expressed herein. I happen to like that disclaimer. I will provide that to anybody that wants it. It is also available on Appraisal Buzz. So I think it's true. I think we will see market times extend. I'm not sure how quickly this economy will have an impact on values, but we will see it and have to look at that. Which is my next slide. What will happen to real estate values? Well, I can't look into a crystal ball and know, but I can tell you certain things. The economy has tanked. There is, I guess now that the states, they don't even know the levels of unemployment right now. The systems are crashing, but it's a fair, I think it was 800,000 lost. I can't remember. That's the wrong thing I'm saying, but it is supposed to be in the millions this week. And there is the stock market has been up and down. Probably will continue. It's up right now, but may continue as well as we fight this terrible disease out there, this virus, and we have pressure on our medical facilities. So we really don't know. There is a lot of uncertainty. I do know this, that driving around Columbus, Ohio, there are acres of commercial real estate that are currently sitting empty. Restaurants, office spaces. There are many, many, many places that are empty. So acres of empty. I don't know if they will fill back up again. We will have to see. Eviction and foreclosure moratoriums only last so long. They are there right now. They're part of the rescue package. They only last so long. Interest rates are still low. They were up a little bit last week, a little bit this week, but they are still low. Supply is still low, so that's good. but watch those inventory levels, listings, and talk to market participants to see how things are going. So, the economic emergency. If we're not currently in a recession, we will soon be. I think that is true. Industries impacted. I just kind of listed a few here: gambling, airlines, hotels, movie theaters, live sports, cruises, shipping, film production, automobiles, oil and gas, retail, tech, conventions, food service, theme parks, gyms, construction, transportation, just to name a few. Lots of things impacted right now. Last week, 300,000 people filed for unemployment. I understand the figure this week will be millions. The stock market last week had the worst week since 2008, with the Dow down more than 17%. Now, obviously, it has risen this week. I think it rose the most since 1933 or something. But that really isn't the hope of this $2 trillion assistance package. The Fed dropped the interest rate to 0%. I don't know, that had some effect, but investors lost a lot of confidence in the bond market, and that forced that Treasury to inject more money to create liquidity on mortgage-backed securities, commercial paper, municipal bonds. Interest rates were up last week, and they may continue this week. So there's a lot of uncertainty. Just kind of hang on to your seats and watch what's happening. So very interesting. Very interesting. So I've come to the end of my webinar. I thank all of you for joining us and for all the hard work that you do, whether it is as an appraiser, as a credit union. I am going to kind of do this kind of a live chat every Monday and Friday, starting next Monday. Basically, what we're going to do is kind of send out an email for various questions, and then we will provide I think it'll probably be either a live or taped webinar that addresses all those questions and in a format on a Monday and Friday, and you can tune in. They will also get put up onto YouTube so that we can address any of your questions. My email address is scarruthers@trueunion.net. I welcome any comments or questions. If there's anything you need, please get hold of me. We very, very much appreciate your hard work, you attending this afternoon, and everything you do. And please, please, please wash your hands and stay safe. Thank you very much.